one's more about how to set up and power a hot tub, and more the main question we've been asking, what I want to cover today is how to use those to heat the hot tub. Now, I want to share this screen with you. With heating water, probably the most efficient and what's been used over the last decade, heating hot water, has basically been resistive loads. Now, with these resistive loads, this is an Australian product. There actually are ones that you can get in the States, which are more MPPTs and regulators. These here, you actually just directly connect your solar hot water to them. Solar panels to them. So just on them, you get your positive and your negative. And this one can take up to 1,000 watts of solar directly into it. So what it's actually doing is it's actually just creating a short. It's going to heat your hot water. So when the sun's out, it's just going to heat your hot water, which is pretty cool. There are better ones, like I said, that are a little bit more expensive, that are MPPTs. One of our customers here in Australia actually has one. I will get Albert to share us the link, and I'll put the link in the description below of what he uses for his. But it's got a regulator and a charge controller in it, which basically going to help the panels perform a bit better when it comes to heating your hot water. And how these work, they actually use the thermostat that's currently in them to turn this off to stop it from boiling your hot water dry, basically. So they're really low-cost options of heating hot water. And one of the things, though, with doing hot water off-grid with solar, the reality is most of the time that you're going to want the hot water at the hottest and enjoy it the most, it's going to be the coldest, and solar's probably not going to perform at its best. So something to really think about and be aware of. It is a bit of a challenge off-grid. Probably the best thing to do with heating hot water off-grid and having on demand all the time. I'm not a big fan of propane or gas. I would go with wood fire and look into rocket stoves. Rocket stoves are so energy efficient. If you don't know what a rocket stove is, be prepared to be in a deep dive. There's some really amazing things you can do with rocket mass heaters, where you can heat your house, heat some thermal mass to keep the house warm overnight, do your hot water, you can cook with them, and so on and so on. So there's a whole rabbit hole to go down with solar hot water. So something to think about there. But these elements, I'd highly recommend if you're looking for something low cost to do hot water off grid. And the reality is, there's a lot of heat pumps getting upgraded these days, which mean they need to remove the old resistive element hot water system. You could probably pick up a water tank with an element already in it and do the same thing and shove the solar panels directly into it. So something to think about there. And you'll be able to pick those up for next to nothing and plumb that hot water tank into your hot tub. With the Cerbo, what it basically is in a Victron system, it's the brains of the system. So it connects all your other devices, so your inverters, your solar regulators, and puts it all into one platform, puts it on the line online. Now, the power of the Cerbo is that anything from a Victron programming point of view that you can do standing in front of it, you can do remotely these days, which is amazing. So from off-grid point of view, and it's really changed, I suppose, my business and how I can help support customers. When I first started doing this, over a decade ago, if something went wrong, had to drive 5 hours, get there. And sometimes it was something really, really simple. And you could have saved a whole drive out there in a waste of a day, basically. Because it's a 5-hour trip out, 5-hour back, whole day of my life that I'm never going to get back. So with the Cerbo, it's really important. If you're going to be DIY off-grid in the middle of nowhere, or even got a system that you've purchased from a company, I'd highly recommend with that there, I'd highly recommend having one of these installed, because you can actually reprogram anything remotely. Gives you so much data. You can see what's going on and put your whole system online. Now, if you're someone that doesn't like your system being connected online, they actually can put an SD card into it. So put an SD card into it, and then once a month if you want, or however long it still takes to fill the SD card up, you can pull that data out, put it on the Victron VRM portal, so you can see everything that's going on. So the Cerbos are well worth it to have them in the system, in my opinion. They just make the Victron off-grid system so much more usable. It's more powerful when there's a grid, when the grid's available. There's a lot of things you can do when the grid's available with the Cerbo. So I'd highly recommend putting every single system. In this thought process here, and I see this a lot on the internet, a lot of people asking this question. A lot of people try and run the DC cable from the remote shed over to the house, or vice versa, One thing I'd say with your house, and first I want to cover this, if your house is in shade, off-grid, it's really going to make it cold, and that's going to be not fun in winter, and you're going to end up spending a lot more energy on heating your house in winter. Good house design is one of the best things you can do when going off grid, and using that solar passive design. Big north facing windows that get covered by shading in summer, but in winter allows that sun to come in. And honestly, it's one of the biggest problems I have with my house here. Our house would be a completely different beast to live with if we had some sunshine in winter. Now, council are cutting the trees down and taking them down. I think next winter is probably going to be the first time we get full sun in winter. There's one more tree to go that the council is going to be removing. And we use a ton of energy in winter heating the house. We're an all electric house here. We're in the middle of town. We didn't go with fire. I would love a fireplace. It's one of those things that, going in wood and all that sort of effort, I really wanted to make the house as energy efficient as possible and do it all with electric. And that's the biggest challenge I face right now every year, is heating the house in winter. So first of all, I address this is, if you can, or if you've got a ton of firewood, great, you're just going to run a fire. But really, it's really important to get their house designed. That's the best money you can spend, is get their house energy efficient and using solar passive design off grid. Something to think about. Now, I want to show you these, what I would recommend. Now, this is DC. So it comes down to the DC versus AC coupled. So if you've got a shed 100 meters away and you want to run DC for 100 meters, the problem with running DC for 100 meters with that there is DC is a lot more dangerous. If something goes wrong with an arc or a spark, DC is more dangerous. You can weld with DC. Just give you a quick example. My motorbike, my electric bike, fell off the trailer on the way home the other day from a ride, and it welded a hole. Literally, the battery cables were severed, and it actually welded a hole within my trailer, which is interesting. So a few things out of that. I've got to move the battery cables and make them a bit safer. And I actually disconnect the battery now when traveling, so they're not exposed, to make sure that doesn't happen. So even though the battery is isolated, with the isolated battery just disconnects it from the bike. The battery cables itself that run out of the battery to the isolator, they were severed, and it just welded a hole in the trailer. So I think it just welded till the battery went flat, basically. Didn't actually affect the battery. Seems okay. Yeah, so DC can be a lot more dangerous. And the way I like to think about it is, if you've got a shed and you've got a house, you're probably going to have AC electricity there anyway. So instead of spending money and digging another cable, you're better off putting bigger cable up for your AC cable and doing it AC coupled. So we use the grid connected inverters. That's a very common thing that you see. We use the FEMA products here in Australia, or ABB is what they used to be around the world. But it's pretty much just simply an AC coupled inverter. The reason we choose to use FEMA off-grid, they're the fastest reacting inverter. So when you turn a kettle on, as an example, or a jug, if you want to boil water, they're on instantly. They're really fast compared to a lot of other brands in the market. It might take 20, 30 seconds before that inverter ramps up. With the FEMAs, it's within 2 seconds. They will ramp up, start cranking, and give you full load. So that basically means that when the sun's shining, they are powering your load instantly, not coming from batteries. So it can really help save your batteries and things like that. Really recommend the AC coupled. So in that situation, from an AC coupled point of view, you've got, 100 meters away. AC is normally more efficient. The cable's normally cheaper when you're doing AC coupled. So using these AC coupled inverters is normally more economical than running DC, over 100 meters. And then also you're just using that same cable. So maybe, if you're digging a trench between 100 meters, I would recommend spending the money and upgrading to put bigger AC cabling. And there is a thing called voltage drop. So some calculators on here, and I'm going to look at this screen here. Length of the cable. So we want to say 100 meters. Current. Let's say we put a 5 kilowatt inverter up, so it's 20 kilowatts, or we want to put a 5 kilowatt load over the house. Voltage drop allowed 1%. Oh, that's 10 meters. We want 100 meters. So you need 50 square mil of cable to deal with that voltage drop, basically. So I'd highly recommend, and the good thing about having a AC coupled inverter in your system, so AC coupled and DC, of a day when the sun's shining, say you've got a 5 kilowatt off-grid inverter and you've got a 5 kilowatt grid connected inverter. What happens there is, of a day, you actually have twice the power. So you get twice the usable power when it comes to, of a day. So you can use a lot more. So the way I like to do with AC coupled systems off-grid, Normally, the way we design systems, we normally want to design a system that the batteries are full by about 11 o'clock and all your panels are going to turn off. So off grid, it's you use it or you lose it. What we like to do with our designs is then we start turning the electric hot water on as an example. So from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock, the hot water is going to come on, run and get heated up. And then the AC coupled inverter is going to fire back up. Your battery is going to stay full and it's going to do everything from your AC coupled inverter. As an example, summer coming up here for us, we have our air conditioners turned on because once our batteries are full, and you know, for us, we're connected to the grid as a backup. We start feeding energy back to the grid, is how it works for us. So instead of feeding energy back to the grid, sometimes it's actually in minuses, which means we get charged, or if you're using energy from the grid at the time, you'd actually be making money, getting paid to use energy. So what we do in those moments when our batteries are full and our systems feed them at the grid, we actually start turning air conditioners and stuff like that on to use that energy and use as much of it as possible. So in that off-grid situation, if you're off-grid, you can heat hot water. You can pump water is another thing we do off-grid, pump water up to water tanks and things like that to take advantage of the excess hot water. Turn air conditioners on coming into summer. I know you guys in the States are going into winter, but it's something that you could do. Air cons are really efficient these days. And if it is winter and your batteries are say full, come by about 1 o'clock, your batteries are full. If you get an AC coupled system, you can actually have your air con actually come on and take that extra energy and use that, you know, and heat the house from sort of 2 to 4 o'clock before the sun sets. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with those excess energy in off-grid situation using the AC coupled inverter. You can do it from a DC coupled system as well. It's the same thing. But I highly recommend it's more efficient using that AC coupling, especially a distance between things that you want to do. I'd always recommend use that AC coupled system. You work out a better system and it does in the long run work out lower costs. And the difference, I suppose, probably with the DIY for you guys in the States, you are working with high voltages with the grid connected inverters, those AC coupled inverters. So something to think about and consider. But with those high volts that you're working with, you're going to get more energy efficiency and you'll get more out of your system. So cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you. I'm going to end that there. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found the content educational and inspiring. If you got something out of it and you think you know someone else that would actually also enjoy it, we'd really appreciate if you could share the link with them and encourage them to check out our channel. Together, let's embrace the power of sustainable living.